Hey there, it's 5 o'clock Monday evening. You know what it means. It's time for the 5 pillars, 5 conversations to be had across all of them, the 5s. And if you're new to this show, go back to the first episode last week and I'll explain more about what the 5 are. It's spirit, mind, body, money, and creativity. But if you want a deeper explanation of each, why they flow that order, why I did this show, episode 1 will cover that. We'll skip all of that and go straight into this now that we're in the second week. And you know, on this show, we have and we will continue to talk a lot about what it means to be aligned. I mean, that's what my whole life is about these days, the authentic life and the alignment of spirit, mind, body, and money, of how we get there, living an aligned life. But this week, as I was going through these headlines, I kept coming back to a different question. And the question is a really good timing with the work I'm doing in my Integrated Wealth Advisor designation program through the Anya Institute of Human Revolution. Shout out to Bree and my classmates. What does it mean to be human right now? And so this week, there's a brand new study that shows Americans are cutting off loved ones at a record rate while simultaneously craving deeper connection at the same time. Now, a new Cochrane review, the gold standard of medical research, confirmed that movement rivals therapy for depression. The research on identity-driven behavior change is finally catching up with honestly feels like common sense. And a record $1.277 trillion in credit card debt tells a story that has nothing to do with interest rates. And the art world is staging a quiet rebellion against AI-generated perfection. So these are the 5. These are the stories we're going to be diving into this week, all across spirit, mind, body, money, and creativity. All right, I want to start this week's spirit off with a new study that dropped that I think tells us something really important about where we are as people right now. We're lonelier than ever, and simultaneously, we're the ones doing it to ourselves. That tension is worth sitting with. Because I think underneath the loneliness epidemic is actually a spiritual question. What does it mean to truly be connected to another person? And are we running from the hard work that it requires? So a headline from Talker Research said that 38% of Americans have gone no contact with a loved one in the past year. And 68% of them say they struggle to build in-person community, with a clear desire for deeper connection sitting right alongside the impulse to cut people off. And so this idea of community is something I've been talking about, writing about, working on something for that, is I think that people are going to be, well, not going to be, they already are craving community more than ever. Human connection. With all of the social media, all of the interactions online, it's not the same as being in person, and we're finally realizing it. I don't know what the turning point was, but we're finally realizing, as this study shows. And there's some more stats I thought were worth highlighting. 36%, is a 2,000-person survey, 36% went no contact because they felt the other person was disrespectful to them. 29% felt the person impacted their own mental health. And 27% felt the person was just too negative in general. And now those are all figures I can get behind, assuming there was some work that had been done to try to fix the relationships, there was conversations going on, communication, and ultimately if someone is no longer aligned with you, they're not serving you, they're impacting your mental health, as hard as it may be, and even if they're a family member, you may just need to let them go. So those are all numbers I actually support, again, assuming that it wasn't just we ran away because relationships got hard, but if it really was time spent in realizing these people are no longer aligned with where I'm going, aligned with who I am or who I want to become, and they're actually impacting my happiness, then there's no reason you have to keep them in your life. You can let them go. The problem is, that I see of this, is another statistic. 34% of people said they felt more lonely than they did 5 years ago. So we're getting rid of people who no longer serve us, but we're not replenishing them, or we're not replacing them with people who are aligned with us. And the study shows that people are struggling to find community. They're struggling to find people to interact with. But some of it is the dynamics of society today, and others of it were they're in there, I forget the numbers, but people would much rather fake a phone call than talk to a stranger. Or they'll cross the street to not have to talk to somebody that they already know. And so there's this kind of, dichotomy here of like, okay, I want community, but I also don't want to do the things to get it there. And I think that inability to commit to finding those people and doing the things and going out of our comfort zone to have conversations with strangers. I've had so many conversations with strangers, and very rarely do they ever amount to long-standing relationships, but they end up making my day better. And so we miss the opportunity just to have that human connection. And maybe that human connection on the one-to-one basis with a stranger doesn't replace community, but it might make you feel better. It might make you feel less lonely. And if you feel less lonely, you might feel more outgoing. And so it all kind of connects. But at the end of the day, while it looks like an external struggle, I do also think it is an internal struggle as well. And then there's another piece that kind of piggybacked on this from Harvard. A Harvard research study showed that loneliness epidemic found that 65% of lonely people said they feel fundamentally separate or disconnected from others in the world. And 57% said they were unable to share their true selves with others. That's not a social problem. That's not a social calendar problem. That is a soul problem. And obviously, you probably know why I picked that part in that quote from that study. We're unable to share their true selves with others. And so what the study doesn't tell me, and what I don't know, but what I think is worth thinking about is, can they not show their true selves because of them? They don't know their true self. They don't have confidence in their true self, or because the people that are around, they don't feel that they would be accepted. Either way, it's not a good thing, but it is an internal thing. It's the authentic life, the importance of it. And you can see that not being able to be your true self, not being able to be your authentic self, is leading to this loneliness epidemic, because in the Harvard study, 57% of the people who said they were lonely said they were unable to share their true selves with others. So the way I'm looking at this from the lens I'm at, being that the authentic life is, maybe not the answer to everything, but I think it's an answer to many things. Going back to focusing first on self, figuring out who we are, finding that confidence. And I think when you connect with your authentic self, more confidence comes because of the way it makes you feel. And when you start to bring that, and you get over the discomfort of talking to somebody new or having conversations and getting out and being social, then you start to find, you find your tribe. So your vibe will find your tribe. And so you're putting yourself out there of who you really are. And yes, some of the people in your circle now may not be aligned. And we're seeing that we're okay letting them go, or we're getting more comfortable with that. But then now we need to allow the people who are aligned with us to find us. And it will happen. They will come in time. And I'm experiencing this now. 10 years of being a financial advisor, 8 of those were really before I started to go down this personal development and the alignment of spirit, mind, body, and money. And so I built this awesome audience. I built this awesome network. And there's still a lot of great people that are very much connected to me today and who I've grown to be. But there's also people who were a part of that past. And for a while, I wondered, well, where am I going to find this? Where am I going to replicate what I did in the traditional financial planning space with where I am today? And those people are now here. I've joined the Leading Edge, a community. People are finding their way to me. Advisors who share similar belief systems as me are coming in here. I did the Integrated Wealth Advisor program, and that's filled with, I think it's 18 or 19 other advisors pursuing the same type of work with clients. So they will end up finding you, whether it is they find you themselves or you find programs or organizations that are aligned that bring people together. Community is very big, and since you're probably one of the few watching the early days of the show, just a little bit of a heads up, there is something that I'm working on with Ange that will hopefully bring that community to more people, those who are looking to live their authentic life. So I'll tease that. All right, we're a little long-winded on spirit, but I also think I think it'll be a trend, if I had to guess. I think spirit will be one of the ones I spend the most time on because I think it's the most important in that alignment. So as I end the spirit section, I want to leave you with the question, as I do with every section. We're cutting people off at record rates while craving connection more than ever. So what are we actually running from? All right, so normally this would be when in the future, I will have mind flash on the screen as a transition, but we're still in no transition zone as we're getting this going. So as we go into mind, this week there's a pattern that I'm seeing. Clients and myself and every self-improvement conversation I read about or hear about, it's about setting goals. We set goals. We change behaviors for a few weeks, and then we drift back. And the reason isn't discipline or a lack of it. It's identity. You can't sustain a behavior that doesn't match how you see yourself. The research is catching up to what honestly feels like common sense once you hear it. And I often talk about when you believe it, you'll see it. The same thing happens with the habits that you have. And I kind of touched on this on my daily note yesterday about the phone and how I'll turn it into black and white mode, and I'll take apps off of it, and I'll do that for a while, and then I'll fall back because on an identity standpoint, I struggle in seeing how I can grow the business the way I have in the past and the way I want to and share the message I want without being on social media. So I can take it off for a little while, but then the experience on the iPad, when I try to use just the iPad for social media because there's more friction, isn't the same, or I feel like I need to do it on the fly, I put it back on my phone and I fall back to old habits. So while I want that and I have discipline, I think the missing piece is what I'm alluding to here is that I'm not seeing myself as someone who can be successful in the work that I want to do and grow the way I have in the past without having social media being a big part of it. So there's a headline from, it's actually an analysis of 5 mindsets for 2026. And usually I'm a little weary of these, but it was I don't know how to say it, Moheh, M-O-J-E-H, men. Thanks to Claude for finding that one for me, because actually the mindsets are really good. So I've never heard of that publication before, but 5 mindsets for 2026. And so what the case of the article was talking about how sustainable change is driven less by goals than by identity. People tend to act in ways consistent with how they see and understand themselves, as I mentioned in the intro, even when those actions undermine their stated actions, which explains the cycle of resolution and relapse. And that was kind of one part of it. So to kind of maybe strengthen your mind for 2026, the 5 mindsets that this article brought up were the let them framework, and I'll give you a little bit more about each. Thinking beyond the immediate moment, anti-fragility instead of avoidance, identity before outcomes, attention is a finite resource. So let them framework, if you listen to self-help podcasts, you probably already think about Mel Robbins and her book. I have mixed feelings on this because I don't know if it's true, but I read that there was a young creative who wrote a poem called Let Them, and it was somehow connected that Mel read that poem, used the let them, and never attributed to this poet. So I don't know if it's true, but if it is true, that makes me frustrated a little bit that someone with a bigger platform could take from somebody who is up and coming or lesser known and just not even give credit to them. But nonetheless, the let them framework is something that you're probably familiar with, and the quote I took from the study just said, when other people act in ways you dislike, fail to meet your expectations, or misunderstand your intentions, let them. And what the real focus is just focus on yourself. Don't let other people's actions, behaviors, beliefs impact your happiness and what it is you're doing, which is another reason to surround yourself with more people who are aligned, but that still doesn't mean that they're not going to have those moments. And also let the world as well. Let all of the headlines and things that are trying to draw your attention, which attention is a finite resource, as you'll hear in a moment, let all that stuff happen. Process it and know what's going on. Don't be naive to what's going on in the world, because you need to know what's going on, and there are injustices out there that you may want to stand up for, or may want to do things to do your part to make change. But don't let those change the lens that you're looking through the world. Just let that stuff happen, process it, and then move forward with your life and control what you can control. Thinking beyond the immediate moment, we are instant gratification society, have been for a long time. The quote I pulled from this was, a long-term orientation acts as a corrective to the despise. It encourages decisions that may not feel immediately satisfying but are more coherent over time. Investing in skills rather than visibility, in relationships rather than validation, in health rather than quick fixes. So the whole thing here is play the long game. That's what it's saying. Play the long game. Most of the time, the short things that we go after, the get rich quick schemes never play out. They might play out in the short term, but they never play out in the long term. And I'll take it one other level. Compromising your values, going against your authentic life in the short term for a gain rarely will play out in the long term, and will most likely, from my experience and witnessing, cause greater problems. So think about the bigger picture, think about the longer term, and realize that you are doing things not for today, but for the future and for the long term. So focus more on the long term, less on the short term. Anti-fragility instead of avoidance. If you've read Nassim Taleb, he had the book Anti-Fragile. That's where this comes from. And I really do like that concept. So an anti-fragile mindset does not romanticize suffering, nor does it seek difficulty for its own sake, which I've written about this before and talked about it. Suffering, I understand why we grow, but I don't believe we have to seek it out to learn lessons. We can learn lessons along the way. Now, this doesn't say that, but since it basically said something that I've said a number of times and I believe, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there. Go back to the quote now. It simply refuses to treat challenges as abnormal. Instead of asking how to avoid strain, it asks how to respond to it intelligently. Another quote was, an identity-led approach reverses this logic. Instead of focusing on outcomes, habits formed, targets met, it asks what kind of person those behaviors belong to. Behavior follows identity, not the other way around. And this was the part I kind of alluded to as we came in. I think it's one of the most powerful aspects of it. I'll never forget a friend of mine talked about how we need to envision and embody the future version of ourselves. And it's not that much different than saying, if I want to, say we want to lose weight. If I want to lose 20 pounds, I need to do these things. That works for some people. but you're not really embodying that future version of yourself. So become that future version of yourself. Already believe that you're there and say, okay, if I am 20 pounds lighter, what am I doing? It's the same steps. It's the same things. But I think when you place yourself in there and that you already are that person and you're saying, okay, what am I doing as that person? It becomes a little bit easier. I like to think about pulling from the future rather than trying to change something today. At the end of the day, whatever works for you is best. But that is something that I have found to be very helpful for me that feeds into this of what they talked about. Identity before outcomes. People tend to act in ways that are consistent in how they understand themselves, even when those actions undermine their stated intentions. And the last one about being anti-fragile tapped into this a little bit, but again, kind of what I was just describing. Be that thing and worry about being that person, and then the outcomes will happen. If you go after the outcomes, then the outcome itself becomes the kind of the goal. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but is the goal really the outcome, or is the goal really the person? And so let's say you set the goal of wanting to stick with the 20 pounds. And let's say you lose 18 pounds in that time frame. You didn't reach your goal, but you become a new person. You've become that person, and just because the scale doesn't match what your number was, what's more important, the number on the scale or the outcome or the identity? And I think it's more the identity. And the reality of it is maybe you just needed another week. So you stick with that identity and you get the 20 pounds and maybe even more. So I think it's more important to focus on the identity, not just in how to get there, but in realizing that the identity is really the goal, not the outcome. The outcome is a byproduct of the identity. And shifting your thoughts, it may help you. You may be seriously goal-driven you need the number and you need the outcome, but I think that it's easier and more sustainable to become anti-fragile as well if you are focusing on the identity and let that drive the outcomes. And becoming the person you want to be is the most important thing, not whatever the measure of that might be. And the final one is attention is a finite resource. Well, I've talked about this for a couple of years now. Like, there is an attack on your attention, and it is a very, very expensive resource, or a very valuable resource. So as the article said, in this context, managing attention is less about optimization and more about refusal. Deciding deliberately what does not deserve engagement. Alignment. If it's not aligned with your authentic life, don't consume it. Don't give it your attention. And then that gives you more time to do the things that are most important to you. I often asked, how do I do all the things? Well, if it's not all the things I do, being a business owner, a husband, a father, creating content, writing, doing these videos, doing podcasts, like how do I do all of those things? Well, I only do the things that are aligned right now, and those are all really important. So all the other stuff that isn't aligned, that maybe I would have spent time on in the past, or others do, I don't do. And so it's all about alignment. What's aligned with your authentic life? Give your attention to that, and everything else that's outside of it, give little or none there. All right. So as I bring this one to an end, what identity are you actually operating from? And is it one that you chose or one you inherited? Imagine body. All right, body just came across. So this week there's a headline that I was kind of surprised by, but I think it connects to something much bigger in the research itself. We talk a lot about listening to our bodies, but what if our bodies are already communicating something we're not hearing? And so this first study, researchers at UT Dallas are finding new ways to detect mental health crisis. And it's not through what people say. By analyzing physical movement patterns, they found that jerky or stiff movements, like an elbow extension that isn't smooth, are indicators of potential mental health crisis. And the big hallmark isn't how fast someone walks, it's their posture. So in this article, the reason that we used that last sentence, they talked about, if you thought about somebody who's depressed, you'd think they would be moving slowly and kind of like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. But the reality of it was that wasn't as strong as an indicator as posture. What do we do with this? I don't know, and they're still studying it, but there was enough evidence to cite that posture was a very strong source, more so than body movement, to determine whether or not mental health crises were a problem or one to be coming. So I think maybe check your posture. I don't know if it's the posture creates or what is going on creates the posture, but paying attention to posture. We've already known that posture is an important thing. But now it might tell a bigger story than we realize. And I just thought that was really interesting. Not a whole lot really to do with that, and not something I think we spent a whole bunch more time on, but I thought I would just share that. And another study that came out, I mentioned in the very intro, the Cochrane Review confirmed something that we already knew, but it's just good to remind you. exercise can ease depression about as effectively as psychological therapy, and compared with antidepressants, exercise showed similar benefits. So we've known movement heals, and now we have even more strong evidence to show that. So more reason to get out and walk, more reason to lift weights, more reason to do yoga, more reason to run, whatever it may be, do Pilates, whatever it is that you do, it's important for you to move, for your physical health and to stay healthy, but now for your mental health. We already know this, just a good reminder. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today, going all the way back up to spirit and the community and loneliness, all of those things, body plays into it. They're all aligned. They're all connected. Another way to meet people, if you go back to the community, is meeting people at a gym. If you have a common interest in taking care of yourself, maybe you will meet more of your tribe at your gym. That's one of the things about CrossFit that is so great and frustrating to some people, is the community aspect of it. Taking care of your body, fighting that depression, fighting that mental health through exercise is great for your mental. It's great for your body, but can also be great for your spirit and helping you find community. You see how all of these end up being connected? All right. If your body is already broadcasting how you're doing emotionally, are you listening or are you just managing it? All right, money. Money this week comes with a number that is pretty big. Americans now owe $1.277 trillion in credit card debt, a record high according to the New York Federal Reserve. Number is staggering, but the story underneath it isn't about interest rates or financial literacy. It's about what we're actually chasing when we spend. And that's the conversation I really want to have. And so when I first thought about the number, I thought, well, okay, today's world, things are more expensive, so obviously credit card debt will be greater, and there's some truth to that. If you compare what people are spending today and have to spend because of inflation versus the past, they're not inflation adjusting these numbers. So that 1.277 trillion, while big, is reflective of where prices are today compared to the past. But there was a statistic that I wanted to pull out that I thought was really important. About 61% of cardholders carrying a balance have been in debt for at least 1 year, up sharply from 53% in late 2024. And so that's where the problem is on the finance side, the number side, is that, okay, a lot of people use credit cards every month. Maybe they carry small balances to get points or whatever it might be. But the fact that there is 61% carrying balances and doing so for more than a year, that is where the financial number comes in problem. Now, that is a problem, but going to the tail end of my intro, the real problem is, why are people doing that? And some of those individuals, they have no other choice. Like, things have gotten more expensive. Wages have not kept up with it. They might be in a situation where they can't afford just regular living. And so those situations I have sympathy and empathy for, and I don't want to talk about those. There are a lot of people who are carrying those balances that should not carry those balances because they are making enough money. They are living comfortably, but they extend themselves because they don't have a sense of purpose. They don't have a sense of self-worth. And so what they're looking for is validation from the outside world, keeping up with the Joneses. You've all heard this before. And so that's where the problem becomes, and that's where this becomes an aligned life problem, is that we're spending more money than we have to spend to try to keep up with the Joneses, to impress people who are not really paying attention to us, and to try to make ourselves feel important and validated. And the reality of it is, instead of looking for that externally, look internally. Go in and connect with yourself. Know who you really are. Know what you really value, and be convicted in those. And don't worry about what other people think, because they're not really paying attention. We all know this. So don't spend to get the attention from people. Give that attention, give that love to yourself. Get it from those who love you, from your family, from your friends, from your community. And don't worry about spending to signal to the world how successful you are. Because honestly, in these days, a lot of times when you see these expensive lifestyles, I don't know about you, but a lot of times I'm thinking that's fake. I'm thinking that is credit card debt funding that. Like, I don't think that if you really have a great life and you have everything you need to be flashy with what it is that you have. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have nice things. I like having nice things. But I'm spending within what I can, and those are purchases that are still aligned. They might be expensive, but they're aligned with my authentic life. And when you spend in alignment, I think it's a lot easier to avoid overspending and getting yourself into the credit card debt, being a part of the 1.277 trillion. So a big number, but I think it signals, there is a financial literacy element to it. There is a financial planning element to it, but I also think there's a spiritual component to it, that while we'll never be able to know how much of that is actually misaligned spending, I think a lot of it is misaligned. A lot of it is spent on things that don't make people happy or that aren't worth it, and they would have been better off never spending that money, but they're seeking and seeking and seeking from the outside world when the answer is on the inside. And this last month was National Financial Literacy Month, and the AICPA put it out pretty simply. Financial knowledge is a critical life skill, and when people understand the why behind their decisions, they are more likely to act with confidence and purpose. The why is the most important part, but was what financial plans often skip. This is nothing new coming from me. This is why I do life planning. This is why I've created my own process built on the life planning foundation of Evoke from the Kinder Institute, adding spirit, mind, body more to it thanks to integrated wealth, and then creating my own process to focus on who is the individual, who is the family, who are they really, what do they really want, what does that life look like, and then let's put the money to that. And when you figure all of that out, you know your why. And so this ties back into my whole rant about the credit cards. Understanding your why, understanding how everything fits into your financial picture. When you can find that alignment and you find that understanding, money becomes a lot easier to manage. Doesn't mean there's not ups and downs, but through alignment, money will take care of itself if you allow it when you understand the why behind it all. So I won't go into it because there's plenty of that from me out there, but I just thought it was a great study. I'm glad the AICPA put it out there just to make me feel more confident in what my belief is in the work that I'm doing. All right, and finally, creativity. I'm going to close this week with an article that kind of gave me some excitement and some energy. Creativity conversation isn't about AI taking over. It's about the rebellion against it. And Canva, which I never thought that they would do any studies, but Canva I use for a lot of templates and things, drawing on data from 260 million creators, declared that this is the year of imperfect by design, meaning creators that are embracing the human imperfections that make work personal, raw, and honest, letting go of the pressure to polish every detail and returning to imagination. Searches for liminal and uncanny aesthetics are up 220% this year on Canva. So basically, how do you prove that you're not AI? Make it imperfect. When for so long we wanted our videos to be perfect. I've had some edits in here. I know that in the past that would bother some people, but those edits let you know that it's a human doing it. My English isn't always perfect. I may mess up a word and keep going. I may stutter, may think. Like, those things are what allow you to know that A, I'm a real person, and B, that I make mistakes. I'm not trying to be perfect. And I think there's something about imperfection that allows us to connect with people. And when we think about creativity, it's a lot about expressing ourselves and that connection that comes with it. Now, what will end up happening is the AI will catch on. They will have imperfections. They will have mistakes. They'll make their AI person cough or sneeze in the middle of a talk. They'll catch up with us. But I still think that there are certain ways that we as humans are imperfect that even AI can't match. And I believe, as this next piece is going to go, South by Southwest confirms it, that more people are going to be seeking creative work from human individuals, not from the AI side. So there's a panel at South by Southwest on AI and creativity, and they said the consensus was worth repeating. Artists and creatives will not be fully replaced because what makes art so special is the emotion and empathy behind it. When I think about the arts, it's a place where I remember my humanity after days of sitting in boardrooms and forgetting. And another quote that I found that I really liked from Daniel Lismore, who is an artist and a fabric sculptor: unless you build the human body exactly how it works and the mind how it moves, AI is never going to be able to take the artist's role, I don't think. And I share that same sentiment. Maybe I'm naive, but I just know myself. And I know if I am this way, then there are other people out there who are that way as well. I might get fooled into hearing a song that is AI, and I might even like it. But as soon as I find out it's AI, it's going to have an asterisk next to it. I'm not going to be as drawn to it, and I probably intentionally won't listen to it because it's AI. I would much rather listen to a human. And I know that there was maybe a human behind the AI that did the writing, and they just created an AI voice to sing it because they can't sing it. But there's just something about that at least right now in my life, it does not attract me to it. And once I find out it's AI, I'm probably going to not listen to it or not read it again. So the whole world may not be that way, but I just look at some of the movie trailers and things that have been created by AI that are supposed to scare us about movies. And while I know they'll get better, I don't think that they're that great. It's really cool what they can do. It's amazing what it can be done. But like when I look at it, it just doesn't fully make sense. There's the flow of it, the connection of it doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, maybe I'll change my tune in the future, but I really do think that people will lean into, knowing that it was a human that created the work, and imperfections for a while are going to be one way to do that. All right, so as I leave you with the spirit, or with the creativity, final question is, if the world is drowning in perfect, frictionless AI-generated content and people are scrolling past all of it, what would it look like to make something raw and perfect and unmistakably yours? And I would love to know what it is. I would love for you to share it in the comments. Create whatever it is that's yours, as imperfect as it may be, and just share it in the comments for people to see. And let's just create a whole thread in the comments of human-made creativity that is imperfect, but it's perfect, if that makes sense. All right. I want to thank you for tuning in for the second week. If you made it this far, I should have did this at the beginning. This week's episode was sponsored by Santiago. Yes, Santiago is my firm. But if you are interested in finding how to align your spirit, mind, body with your money, and even bring creativity to the financial planning process, I don't know of any other firm doing it like I am at Santiago. Those are all very important pillars and components of the planning work, helping us making sure we align your finances with your authentic life. So if that sounds of interest to you, head on over to santiago.life. You can schedule a get-to-know meeting. We can talk through it and see if it'd be a good fit. Next week, this will be at the beginning of the episode, but I just forgot and remember now. So hopefully somebody saw it this late in the video. All right, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I will be back next Monday, 5 o'clock with the fives. Until then, have a great week and keep pursuing.